David is a professor of Korean and International Cultural Tourism at Sejong University and a long-time researcher on the religious characteristics of Korea's mountains. A native of the United States, he has been living in Korea for 33 years now. He has authored or edited 10 books on Korean Buddhism and solitary sage, the profound life, wisdom, and legacy of Korea's Chilchiwon, a well-known historical person. So tonight he's going to share with us some of his expertise on the topic of the King of the Dragons, the Yong-wang and other dragons in Korean shrines. So without further ado, let's welcome Professor David Mason with a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. This is, I'm honored to be here speaking for the RIS. This is my 17th RIS lecture. I do believe 3 more, and I get a free one. I think that is. I think that's how it goes. And it feels a little strange for me today because every time when I lecture for the RIS, I have a book to sell, I got a book to plug. This time I don't. There's no book back there waiting for me to sign. That feels kind of strange. The topic of tonight's lecture is going to be my next book, but it was too busy this year and could not finish writing it. It's not published. And such, so maybe later. Maybe I better dim this front light if somebody knows how. Light here. We want vivid photos. Talking about the dragons here, the dragons and the king of the dragons in Korean culture as a player, an agent in Korean cultural motif in particular. Good, that's better, I think. All right, if you can still see me.
Yep.
Now, my first theme out of like 5 major themes or theses in this presentation. First of all, it's of the East and West dragons. They seem to have developed fairly independently. The idea of dragons, both in China and in North to Central Europe, goes way back pretty much as far as we know of their cultural history. We don't know how either one was invented. We don't know why both Europe and China developed belief in dragons. There's an obvious similarity to dinosaurs, and some people think by finding dinosaur bones or even some very primitive simian memory of dinosaurs, but that seems impossible. Actually, they kind of look like dinosaurs, flying dinosaurs, but it's not really derived from that, and we don't know if East or West developed this idea first, or if they both simply developed it independently. This is one of the great mysteries of cultural anthropology academia and such. But East and West, they're very different. In the West, generally seen as evil and bad creatures, and generally with these bat-like wings that allow it to fly. Wings which do look like some primitive kinds of dinosaurs, and also breathing fire and causing disease, disasters to people. Yes, there we are. In a recent movie which you may have seen, the dragons as bad guys and evil intended and hoarding wealth, hoarding, desiring gold, living on it, very greedy and destructive fire power, breathing fire, in fact, welling up fire, just breathing it out. You can imagine dragons are always a symbol of unending, twisting, moving, primordial energy, and in this case the energy of fire. Like when fire starts in a wooden town, a wooden village, and the wind whips it up, and it seems just an unstoppable, powerful force. That's the idea of dragons, and it's very sad and very destructive, destructive power that people learn to respect and fear. Some of the oldest literature in Europe, some of the earliest myths from Central to Northern Europe, Beowulf has Beowulf fighting a dragon, an evil dragon, being the hero to kill it. And later with Christianity, a major theme in medieval Christianity was St. George killing the dragon, rescuing a fair maiden, a virgin princess woman, rescuing her from the dragon, killing the dragon. This is all over medieval art, Gothic cathedrals everywhere. Kind of goes away a bit, de-emphasized during the Renaissance, but comes back for the Baroque. The Baroque churches, once again, getting real big. St. George killing the dragon. It's all over Europe. In my several trips to Europe, I gathered all these photos, paintings, and stained glass windows, killing the dragon, St. George. It's a major theme of European Christianity, and many parts of Europe kind of named themselves after this. Kings took it as their personal totem, killing these evil dragons depicted. And even Christianity later, to modern Christianity, that is dragon as Satan, Satan, Lucifer himself, as appearing as a dragon, having no sense, although usually the goat horns is the more usual motif, but still dragon with these huge back wings, these clawed wings, a symbol of evil itself. Although sometimes in the Western, in the European tradition, as it developed sometimes, dragons are used for military banners, military valor, and even royal seals, and even sometimes a symbol of wisdom, a strange kind of twist, because dragons are generally seen as greedy, evil, the very opposite of wise, but some occult and mystical sects taking a dragon as a symbol of wisdom or of royal nobility. So you get different twists. In the East, something very, very different. They also had dragons, but really quite opposite and of a very different form. The ancient Chinese character, the seal script, this goes way back to the very beginning, like the oracle bone, very first writings we have of Chinese culture includes the word dragon, the symbol on there. So it goes back at least 4,000 years that we know of and such. But they're powerful, just like Western dragons, powerful but much more common, much more everywhere, and beneficial. They're good, basically on the side of good, although to be feared and respected as necessary. The character, the Chinese character, and now simplified in Korea, it's pronounced either way, Yong or Yong, in different spellings, both as such a common word. It's one of the, like in place names, so geographical indexes, it's one of the most common terms there is for naming a place, villages, rivers, mountains, places of all kinds, right up there with mountain and stream and such as some of one of the, at least the top 3 or top 5 most common characters. The Chinese dragon goes way back and is very famous, artistic depictions of dragons. Now you notice something a little different. First of all, not the giant wings, not the back wings. No wings on here, just more scales and then a back fin running all along. They're presumed to be able to fly as well as swim through water, but it's even their flying technique is more like a fish wriggling through the water, actually. There's no real wings on the dragon. It also has horns like a Western dragon, but a little more extended horns and not so spiky and such, and longer legs. The European dragons got these short legs, but big wings. The Oriental dragons, somewhat longer limbs, more like real legs that can reach, grab things. Okay. Almost an unlimited range of supernatural powers. Dragons can do just about anything. They're not really very limited. They're being benevolent, wise and just. They enforce justice, which can be harsh sometimes, like with a judge, but with general good intentions and wisdom. Also, they're generally held to be invisible. We don't really see dragons, but enlightened people can see them. It's always the enlightened, whether from Buddhist tradition or Confucian tradition, Taoist tradition, whatever, the sages, enlightened people can see dragons. Artists, obviously, can depict them. Depicted with a cow's head, a big snout, deer antlers, etc. Chaperons, insect, whiskers, those long trailing out there, almost like a catfish, tiger's teeth, snake's body, fish's tail, eagle's claws, but without the bat wings. So it's a combination of many different kinds of animals, and basically kind of behaves like a fish as far as it's like an eel, like a water eel, kind of always bending, twisting, and kind of wriggling through in movement. I would like to point out, just in Europe, I'm sure that in classical, pre-modern times, there's a couple 100,000 depictions of dragons in drawings, paintings, statues, whatever. Over here in East Asia, it's kind of mind-blowing if you even try to think about it. How many times has a dragon been painted, drawn, statue, ceramics, whatever, it's billions, billions, billions. If you consider all of China, the vastness of China, and down to all Southeast Asia, and then Korea and Japan, billions, maybe 10 billion times some artist has made a dragon. It's unbelievable. It's far more than any other figure, way more than any other single kind of animal or human, anything like a Buddha figure, a Dharma figure. There may be millions of Buddhas depicted, whatever. Maybe only the lotus flower could compete with this, with the dragon, for how many times it has been artistically depicted in the last 2,000 years. Billions of times, and maybe 10 billion times. Think about that. It's kind of mind-blowing. There's really nothing else like this on Earth that has been so commonly artistically depicted so frequently, and still today. You just go around Korea today, just around Seoul City. How many dragons are there? Painted on various buildings, and the buildings and rafters and shrines, and in the museums, and just counting traditional items and such. How many dragons are there just in Seoul City? There's probably nearly 1 million just right here in this general area. So, quite ubiquitous. In China, now we get to this, kind of a second theme of such difference between China and Korea. And so now in China, very famous as imperial symbol, the emperor of China, always associated with dragons. Dragons on his chest, sitting on the dragon throne, in the dragon symbolizing the imperial power of the emperors, the power derived from heaven, as he's the son of heaven. The dragon represents the heavenly power of government ever since the Zhou dynasty, which is about as early as we know, real Chinese culture, anything for sure. So 3,000 years ago, it has been the symbol of government power in China. As a royal robe that was on display recently with a rather bug-eyed dragon, and dragons on the sleeves, beautiful, always used in this way. Five-clawed dragon. But this used to be an enforced thing. It used to be legal, set laws, and if you violated this, you'd be punished. The five-clawed dragon only for the emperor. Four-clawed dragon, the highest levels, like a prime minister and the top-level state ministers, also for foreign kings. So, for example, the king of Korea could use a four-clawed dragon, and only the emperor of China would use a five-clawed dragon. You wouldn't want to be caught with a painting of a five-clawed dragon, or you'd be accused of pretending to challenge the emperor. And three-clawed dragons often used provincial gentry, wealthy commoners, important people, whatever, could only use use a 3-clawed dragon. This, by the 20th century, this got very much violated, and people started using 5-clawed dragons if they wanted to. There used to be a law and such under China. This is a typical 5-clawed dragon and such with the pearl, which we will discuss in a moment. Became a whole symbol of Chinese culture, an emblematic animal representing China, just like the bald eagle represents America, and the brown bear for Russia, and the double-headed black eagle for Germany, and the British lion and the British bulldog. I guess they have two, and the French mouse, or whatever, the emblematic animals of a nation. Certainly the dragon, everybody knows China's the dragon. Very interestingly, when they held the Olympics back then, everybody expected China was going to use an Olympic mascot of a dragon, but the government didn't do that because it was too fearsome, too powerful, too imperialistic. And the government was trying to promote at that time the theme of China peacefully rising, so they used the panda, the cute, cuddly panda bear during the Olympics, not the dragon, because they didn't want to scare their neighbors, and they wanted to show China's peacefully developing with the cute panda. But soon after the Olympics, they abandoned that. They went back to being the dragon, and they don't care who knows it. I'm not worried anymore about this image. Now we get to Korea. The earliest depiction we have in Korea, the tomb in North Korea. That's a UNESCO World Heritage Site with the 4 emblematic animals, and on the east, this is the dragon that's on the east. The earliest one we have, this goes back maybe 400 AD, around that era. Such our very first painting we have from Korean culture of that. Used all kinds of ways, and that would be a whole lecture in itself, to trace it through the 3 kingdoms, the Goryeo dynasty, the Joseon dynasty, often used here, military flags from a museum we have right here in Seoul, often obviously as a military character, looking rather fierce, and such various combinations of writhing dragons. And the color matters, the yellow dragon, the red dragon, the blue dragon, such these were different military units, and often sometimes faced against the white tiger. As late as the Vietnam War, the Korean army sent the white tiger division and the blue dragon division to Vietnam under such battle flags and insignias. These are just historic ones from Joseon dynasty, just showing some of the variety. Right here in Seoul, one of the oldest depictions surviving that we have in Seoul that's still original and hasn't been painted over at the Dongmyo Shrine. Just barely, you can still make it out. In every palace and every shrine, these things have been repainted in modern times. But that may be the oldest original one in its original position that we have here in Seoul itself. And it's, again, it's on the Dongmyo Shrine, which was a shrine for China, but established under national government auspices, and therefore, again, representing kind of government power, being on the door as a guardian. Now this is above the throne, very famously in Yong-wang Palace. You've probably seen it. Last time you ever toured Yong-wang Palace. It had been a while, and right above the king's throne, which has little dragon gold heads on the sides, this painting, and this gets maybe a third point, like they're made a little different. They're playful. They're playful. This looks like a rather happy dragon, doesn't it? And this one looks kind of goofy. A bit goofy, they're a bit bug-eyed, a little happy, a little playful. It's somewhat different. In China, much more of a tendency, especially in classical Chinese arts, more of a fierce, angry-looking dragon, something to be feared, imperial power, you must fear and obey, sort of an idea with the dragons. In Korea, a lot more tendency in the traditional, the older, to look more playful, more happy, softer, gentler, not into that big imperial power thing, more being dancing around the clouds with even a bit of sense of happiness. Neither one of these is universal. China has a few happy dragons you can find. Korea has a few fierce warlike dragons, like on those military flags, certainly for good reason. Those are fierce dragons, but you see a lot more of this in Korea. Somehow, over the past 30 years, I've been paying attention to this. You get more of this in Korea, the gentle and nice-looking dragons, happier dragons here. I used to work at Sejong University, and this is their main symbol, their main monument on campus. They consider this very noble. I found it is conquering and devouring the earth, wrapped around the earth, but this is somehow an idea of globalization. Dragon, and he's holding the writing brushes here, showing he's a scholarly dragon. I don't know, it could mean something. Dragons frequently appear on ceramics, and that would be a whole lecture in itself, especially the Joseon Baekja, white porcelain, and other things. This is in a museum, such. Now, they're frequently shown chasing this pearl, a flaming pearl. It's often either bright red, just in itself, and then looking like the sun, actually, like the sun, just a red ball, but often flaming on the sides, having flames come out of it, sometimes extensive flames, and it's chasing. Now sometimes it has the red ball in its mouth, but never swallowing it. Can't swallow it. It can catch it, at most it can catch it, hold it in its mouth, cannot swallow it, but otherwise always chasing it and being kept apart from it. So this gives various motifs and meanings of wisdom, spiritual energy, prosperity, immortality, gathering wishes, or even the moon, where a kind of yin-yang symbolism. The dragon is primordial energy, endlessly moving, dynamically moving, physical energy, physical force. The Li polarity, if you know what that is, principle versus material energy in Chinese philosophy. And the dragon represents material energy, natural force, energy, and the pearl is everything kind of opposite of that, whether spirituality or wisdom or principle or even wishes becoming true beliefs and such. The dragon's endlessly chasing, but cannot consume it. Cannot consume it and subsume it. Always they remain as a duality. The dragon's endlessly, infinitely chasing that other principal factor. Here in a Joseon Baekja, fairly typical kind of thing, the dragon, and looking rather fierce and expectant, and here's that red pearl with the flames coming off and cloud-like figures and skirting all around, trying to get it, but never quite. Here again, the dragon on a very typical Joseon piece. You saw it in a shop, imitation of the pearl this time, with a bit of a yin-yang symbolism inside the pearl and such. The dragon curling all around, trying to get it, trying to reach it, trying to swallow it. Often the wooden dragons in the temple, you often have it in their mouth. Sometimes just for artistic reasons, because carving the pearls separately out at a distance just isn't possible sometimes. Okay? These are still associated with heavenly and royal powers, especially in palace artworks, so that they inherited this from the Chinese, and there's no record of dragons in Korean culture before Chinese culture comes here and gets planted about 400 AD with that tomb. There's no idea of they knew about dragons or had that concept before getting Chinese culture. They inherited it, and like all over the palace museum, dragon motifs. Again, look at this bit funny, goofy sort of a thing on a royal king's robe, and you wouldn't find that in China. In China, it would be a fierce, angry, serious-looking dragon that you better take seriously. This is a bit of a goofy dragon on the robe of the king of Korea and such. And this more kind of a snake cobra dragonish thing. Taejo Isamge, founder of the Yi Dynasty, of course, wearing a Chinese-style dragon on his red robes as king of Korea. Very formal. This was inherited from China and is fairly standard. Here in a more shamanic and Buddhist protector guardian painting of a senior government official, fierce-looking guy with a real heavy-duty dragon on his frontispiece. Now, they're still associated with that, and they're used that way in the palaces, but there's a whole different aspect, which is also present in China, but much bigger here, and this is then my third, or at the fourth major theme point by now, more commonly used as water spirits. This is one minor theme in China, but it's the major theme here in Korea. It's something quite culturally different and distinctive here in Korea. What is water spirits? What does this mean? The hydrological cycle. Water moves. Water moves continuously through the ecosphere in an endless cycle. Early people realized that. Dragons then are the invisible but very dynamic factors that cause the water to move. But why the clouds are moving in the sky and changing their shape, why rivers flow downhill and go over waterfalls, they didn't know about gravity back in the old days. The reason why water keeps moving, the reason why there's waves in the ocean, even though no wind is blowing, it's dragons. Dragons are making the water move. We just can't see them because we're not enlightened, of course, all of us. We can't see the dragons, but that's why the water is moving. It's always moving. Dragons are in it. The mountains don't have any dragons in them. The mountains are not moving. They stay where they are, but water's always moving. And in fact, if water stops moving, it dies. You know that. If you capture water in a pool and it doesn't move for just a few days, it becomes stagnant water, bad water, starts growing weird bacteria. If you drink it, you'll get sick. Water has to move to stay healthy. If the water's not moving, that means the dragons are not there. The dragons are dead. And you got a problem, and it's no good water anymore. If the water's moving, if the dragons are active, it's good for human life. It's how we do our farming, it's how we have water to drink and cook and even wash ourselves and do our laundry and every other thing. Water is so essential to human life. Good water, fresh water, clean water, and healthy water, and it's dragons that make that happen. Okay. Water goes rising up to heaven from the ocean. You can see the water rising up and becoming clouds, evaporating off the ocean and lakes. And the clouds are always changing their shape and moving, something we love to watch. Make fanciful videos. And many people do see, dragons in the clouds sometimes. Sometimes the clouds are shaped like a dragon. I've seen that many times. Never really got it on film very well, but I've always seen that. And the clouds form rain, gather around the mountains, and kind of a yin-yang partnership again. The clouds gather around a mountain and bring rain down, which collects in the streams and pools. Water springs out of the earth in springs and such, and it gathers into big rivers. Streams have waterfalls tumbling down. It's dynamically moving, energetic. Streams, ponds, rivers. That's where human civilization is. Every town, every city is at a water source. Every great city in the world is built on a river. And ancient people knew that the river starts way back there at the mountain, and that there's this cycling. The river goes from the mountain, ends through all the river, ends in the ocean, rises from the ocean, goes back to the mountain as clouds, comes down again. That there's that cycle, and that's how human life is maintained, how human civilization is built on these cycling water sources. They knew this, and they worshipped this principle as dragons here in the East. Now, there are many paintings like this. This is a modern one. Again, kind of a happy, goofy dragons, which I'm saying is characteristic of Korea more often than China. Definitely. The clouds, dragons dancing in the clouds. This is a traditional motif often used for the idea of happiness and harmony when the dragons are dancing dancing in the clouds are there moving, there's going to be rain, there's going to be water, we have water for our crops, our agriculture, everything, the ecosphere is working as it should. Okay, and you get things like the origin of rivers. This is one of the two origins of the Nakdong River. The Great Nakdong River, which is the largest river in Korea, way up on Taedeksan, 1,500 meters high, a spring that gushes an amazing amount of water from being so high at that altitude inside here, and it's a major dragon shrine. It's called the Yong-wang, the dragon well there, and is heavily worshipped. This painting, depiction and such is nearby. In Korean shamanism, which has been used within Taoism and Confucianism also, the idea of the rain-bringing dragon for when there's a drought. When there's a serious problem of drought, not enough rain, that means the dragons aren't operating. They're just not doing their job. They're not bringing the clouds in to bring the rain. Why aren't they? We don't know. We don't know the ways of dragons, why they're doing it. The ceremonies have paintings like this of dark clouds, black clouds, and a very active, dynamic dragon. This painting is from the collection of my old teacher, my mentor, Zhou Jiayong, from the 1980s. Paintings like this were made of black clouds, rain-bringing dragon, and major rituals and ceremonies held to appropriate the dragon spirit to bring the rain to us that we need. Opposite kind of paintings like this could be used to stop excessive rain also. When you got too much rain, then there's flooding, which is generally less of a problem than not having enough rain, but still it's a problem. Now, this concept within Buddhism, this kind of gets married to Buddhism, particularly here in Korea, more in Korea than in China, where it remains more as a Confucian and Taoist kind of symbol of heavenly power and imperial authority, but it gets mixed in more in Korea with Buddhism, but this starts with Buddhism in India as the Nagas. Nagas, who are snake gods, like giant cobra. Here, it looks like here he's about to eat the Buddha, but no, that's not what's happening. He's spreading his hood to shelter the Buddha from rain. He's an umbrella. In India, kings were known to have sunshade umbrellas over them, held by servants all the time as a symbol of a king or a great god. And it's a Buddha that these Naga snakes would come up and protect him. Or a bodhisattva figure like this and such from India with the snakes spreading their hoods and making it protective. In the West, we don't like snakes. We think snakes are kind of junior dragons, they're kind of evil figures of say that in India they're very powerful, benevolent, and good kind of gods here that cover the various deities and such. This idea of Nagas, this gets mixed in China with Chinese culture, gets mixed with the Chinese dragons, and here's a depiction, it's actually from Thailand, which has a whole lot of Chinese culture going in it, mixed with Indian Hindu culture, and this kind of idea, a giant, kind of snake-like dragon, and out of its mouth, kind of giving birth or vomiting to the 7 Naga snakes, which are kind of dragonish. This becomes a blend, and it gets into Buddhism. Never so colorful in Korea, but you get depictions like this. This is the baby Buddha, just when he's been born, and takes 7 steps, which turn into 7 lotus flowers. Now in India, this exact same painting or statue, these are again 9 snakes, 9 big snakes with their hoods open, cobra snakes, over sheltering him, simply giving him shelter. But here, this is the Chinese thing, you got 9 dragons of 9 different colors, kind of forming a protective barrier over him in these dark clouds, kind of implying rain, but they're protecting. But also notice here, they're kind of breathing energy, a kind of spiritual energy, breathing it into him. This is often seen in Oriental artwork as a kind of theme of how you get extra spiritual energy into you and built up and such. And they're doing this for the baby Buddha, 9 dragons of 9 different colors and such. And now this Notice how opposite this is from the Western concept where dragons breathe fire and destroy, kill people and destroy cities with their firepower. Here it's a benevolent spiritual energy they're breathing out into the baby Buddha and also in other figures at other times. Another depiction using Korea you'll see frequently on drums. And you get the obvious connection between drums and thunder that goes along. The cloud, roiling clouds and storms and heavy rain and such. The thunder that comes, and then drums, beating drums. You have a lot of dragons depicted in various colorful ways on the various drums. Buddhist drums, but also the palace drums, military drums, Confucian ceremony drums, all using the dragon. It's really a cross-religious usage in this kind of way, very colorful and excellent. Okay, ceiling dragons. No time to go into this, but simply on the top of the ceiling, kind of holding up the roof, dragons with an uplifting power and depicted in the center of ceilings, including in gates like this, very colorful dragons at the top of gates. When you walk through fortress gates or palace gates and looking up at Kimbok Palace on the east gate, the eastern gate would have a colorful blue dragon. The western gate has a white tiger. The geomantic directions here, but also in other fortress gates. This is in one of the north gates of Seoul, actually. And here, another one. Again, a little kind of friendly and goofy looking. Take note. A real more Korean-style dragon, a blue one. From that, dragons are guardians. Now, another whole thing to get into, the Oriental zodiac. You know, the year of the pig, the year of the rat, the year of the snake, well, the year of the dragon. In fact, dragon is the leader of the 12 animals, supreme, and first in the cycle, and this snake is kind of a junior dragon in that. So these animals are in pairs. The 12 years of the zodiac, which relates to people's life and their fate and destiny, according to which year you're born, but also in the general calendar 60-year cycle of things, the dragon on ancient tombs. The most famous dragon depiction in Korea, maybe Kim Yushin's tomb, General Kim Yushin in Gyeongju, being a military man, had the 12 Oriental animals on around his tomb, and this is the dragon depiction. This is a much more modern one on the wall of Dosunsa Temple here in Seoul, again just as purely as like a calendar year guardian, fortune-bringing figures. Okay. Also at Dosunsa Temple here, the most extraordinary Budo in all of Korea, the most obscenely fancy funeral monument ever made in Korean Buddhism, and really a violation of all the standards of Korean Buddhism in just how luxurious and fancy it is. But this is here, and at its base, this collection of guardian dragons, rather happy looking, again, rather joyful for guardians. They don't look too fierce, but in the water, kind of water cloud motifs here, and dragons are going around making a protection for this funeral monument of Master Chongnam, one of the most important Buddhist monks of the late 20th century. Right. In most temples, you have this kind of Budo field of stupas, and then monuments next telling whose ashes are in the stupa, and their biography, and they're generally all capped with dragons and such. And these are major historical monuments all over temples and palaces and other public places in Korea, through China, through Vietnam, through Japan, all over East Asia. And the Confucian ones in later years were more simple, kind of like this, with simple caps. But these more elaborate caps have been used for more than 1,000 years. Again, dragons dancing in the clouds. Up close like this. Again, now this then is a symbol of heavenly powers, dragons in the clouds, the heavenly powers of water above, where the turtle base on these Down here, the turtle, which is rather dragonish turtle in late Joseon Dynasty, more and more dragon. In earlier times, more like a natural turtle, like in the Three Kingdoms to Goryeo, but becoming more dragonish over time. The turtle represents Earth, and this is a trinity, Chunji-in, a whole different topic in itself, heaven, earth, and humanity, the basic trinity that you see in the red, blue, yellow symbol, the Samtaeguk of Korea. Heaven, earth, and humanity as equal to each other, with equal rights and responsibilities towards each other, and these are living monuments of this philosophical idea. Dragons dancing in the cloud on top, turtles representing the earth on bottom, black stone motifs, a fish with the fish coming out, a symbol of prosperity and such, and standing on this dragon, and a dragon-ish hete, but with more of a dragon face, for the bodhisattva of wisdom, although that's probably actually compassion, but it's more of a wisdom motif. Don't worry about that. Okay, the king of the dragons, who we're going to talk about in just a moment more, appearing with lotus flowers, offering to Wansim Bosal, the bodhisattva of compassion, a frequent motif of this bodhisattva, often include down in the corner of the king of the dragons coming out to offer, so obviously inferior to him, but used. Then we did the folk tales, many folk tales in Korea, and this goes along sometimes with all the place names that use this motif. Appearances of dragons as portentous, auspicious signs, including in dreams. And please refer to our friend Jeremy Seligson, who's probably going to speak about this to the area sooner or later. Dragons appearing in dreams, that's his whole expert motif. Such that more of the folklore side of it. I'll ask him about that. At Buddhist temples, artworks like this in a pond of water thing, an incense burner, incense burning, and then the 9 dragons close around each one with the magical pearl in their mouth. The Saturn-Wang moon, the 4 heavenly kings gate, has a special motif of dragons. 4 heavenly kings that defend the mystical Mount Meru, the mountain at the center of the world, defending it on the north side, south side, east side, west side. 10,000 meter tall, great giant kings, guardian kings, very important, heavily used in Korean temples, usually the 3rd gateway to a traditional temple on the way in. One of these gates with these miniature statues of the giant kings and the king of the west. Always this is the king of the north, the king of the west, always looking very fierce, holding a dragon. It shows how big he is. He's 10,000 meters tall. He can hold a dragon in one hand and control it, and he has the pearl, the wish-granting pearl, the mystical pearl of wisdom, spirituality, or good fortune wishes as you will, holding it separate from the dragon. And many such motifs of these Western kings with the dragon and the flaming pearl. It's hard to say whether he is holding the pearl away from the dragon so the dragon can't get it, and the dragon's kind of frustrated, or is he slowly bringing it to the dragon? Is he kind of feeding it towards the dragon? It's really not clear, and there's no text that exactly describes this or clarifies this. Nobody really knows, but I kind of wonder, and it's depicted in different ways. Obviously the dragon is fixated on the flaming pearl and really wants it, and he's holding each in both hands. Is he bringing them together or holding them apart? Hard to say. Yeah, this is often depicted in paintings, also the Saturn-Wang, the 4 heavenly kings, depicted in paintings on the side corners of various kinds of Buddhist paintings, with the Buddha in the center. This is again the king of the west here with a yellow dragon in his hand, he's got the pearl in the other hand. It's done in paintings, many paintings. Here's a close-up of one of those paintings, a very eager and well-depicted dragon, a bit bug-eyed, still not too fierce or angry looking. And yet another usage, another picture usage. Oh my God, we have so many. here to try to cover the dachi, which is a canopy, deriving again from the Indian idea of having an umbrella, an awning or umbrella over a god, a king or a god, with the status of a king, and such, having an umbrella over. This developed into China, into this kind of complex wooden altar canopy that you often see over every Buddha statue you'll see enshrined in Korea, and then they have dragons inside of them. Dragons are inside of here with the magical pearls sticking out and angels on the side. Rather very complicated wood carving sort of system here to get dragons in the clouds and such. This is over the Buddha statue. And many people don't even notice this because they're just looking at the bronze Buddha statue. But next time, look up above the Buddha, get close, and you'll always find a dragon in there, or maybe several dragons. In this case here, above the Buddha, 2 dragons coming competitively for the pearl. In between the flaming pearl, you got a bluer dragon and a yellow dragon. Here, carved in metalwork carving. This is an older place, one of the Joseon Dynasty things, the black dragons very attractively with the red flames and blue clouds and such over the Buddha painting. Okay, yet another usage. And this one's kind of unique to Korea. Now, Chinese do have the depicted awnings over the Buddhas and such, just they're more prominent and fancier in Korea. Now here, this is kind of unique. These giant bells, the big bronze bells, which Korea is so proud of. Korea made some of the biggest, best bells in all the East Asia in traditional times, starting way back in the 700s. Koreans became experts on this, and we're not sure even how or why, but they made some of the best bells and best sounding bells, such good bells that by the end of the 700s they were shipping bells to China. Consider the shipping cost of that. Whenever it's gigantically, hugely expensive to ship a 1-ton bell over the ocean, but the Chinese would pay the shipping charges and pay for a bell, because it was a better bell than the Chinese could make. And we don't know why, how the Koreans got that skill so early, but we know that they did. But one of the key characteristics of a Korean bell is this dragon, curled over dragon that's welded to the top of the bell or cast directly into the bell itself, that then holds up. The job is to hold this huge weight, and the biggest Korean bells are 2 or 3 tons of metal, fantastically heavy, but then being held by a single iron ring and such by this kind of unbreakable dragon that holds up and also helps to give the bell its resonant sound. Not only just holding, but it also helps in the sound along with this sounding tube grafted to the back of the dragon. It's a whole complicated technology that I do not have time for. But things like this, in this case, 4 dragons on the 4 sides, and their meeting curled backs, holding up a gigantic bell like this. It's a uniquely Korean thing. This is a smaller bell that is close up in a museum. The dragon on there, not even really necessary for a smaller bell. You could just put a simple wooden, simple metal hook, loop on that. You could, but they always did it with this kind of dragon. Here's another one, holding his mouth, glomming the bell here on both sides, and his body and feet. It's really quite a production in itself, a whole artwork. Different artwork created for the bell to put on there that has a real serious meaning for it. And yet more, the beams, the roof beams, which is something people usually do notice. This is in palaces, in major buildings and pavilions, in the Buddhist temples, dragons on the beams. Dragons as creatures of the clouds and the sky. They're thought to be uplifting creatures. Dragons have an uplifting, a raising kind of energy, just like clouds rising up off the ocean, going towards heaven. And so on the roof beams, painted on the beams or above the beams, coming over the beams, outside the building, all of this as kind of a thing, holding up that heavy tile roof, giving it some lifting energy, stopping it from collapsing. All over. Here, unpainted at the front of the temple, a whole series of dragon heads, as if the dragon body is inside the building of the temple. The main beams of the temple are dragon bodies, and the heads are thrusting, sticking out from the temple. This is very common for any kind of Buddha hall with the signboard and blue and yellow dragons on both sides, racing across. A very common scene, and often quite excellent works of art in themselves. This is an older one, a cruder one, kind of colorful. This is on the inside of the temple building, sticking in, and such. More commonly outside like this, with the big metal, the antenna kind of whiskers coming up here made of metal, and such. Usually blue and yellow, which represent, in this case, east and west. The blue dragon is always east. In this case, yellow dragon being the west instead of a white tiger. It's a different color and animal system. All dragons. Here's a really old one from, this is from Unsusa, from Pagongsan. A really old one that hasn't been painted over probably from the 1800s. Just barely make it out, but nice, evocative, a much sharper one. This is from Bokuksa, the famous temple in Korea. Was just painted in the 1960s, but already the wood is cracked, but it's a sharp, evocative dragon. In that, this is a rare case of dragons on the pillars. Pillars in front of the Buddha statue, dragons just painted onto vertical pillars. That's not usual, it's hard to find, but you can. Here in a pavilion, this is a Confucian pavilion dedicated to the Confucian scholar Che-Chi-Wan that I wrote a book about, and 5 different dragons of the 5 colors through these beams, each one depicted through there, painted in modern times, of course, but on traditional motif. At Bukuksa, in the main hall, very famous, this kind of dragon bracket thing, and then putting its head over a main roof beam, and other colorful folk animals going along with that. There are always a pair of dragons at the back. This has to do somewhat related, the idea of the dragon ship, the Banya Yongsun, the wisdom dragon ship, which is, this is the vehicle that takes the spirits of dead people to the afterlife, crossing the ocean of suffering and getting to the paradise of Buddha, the paradise of Buddhist heaven. And the ship itself is a dragon, with the guiding bodhisattva and the bodhisattva of salvation attending on the side. The ship itself as a dragon carrying the people. This is a rather well-known painting, I think to many of us. It's from Tongosa, and again, it's one that hasn't been painted over for a long time, maybe at least a century, maybe more, and really shows kind of the older way of painting of this from the Joseon dynasty. Here, another one, dragon ship going to paradise, the bodhisattva. In this case, it's a wooden ship, but the dragon is carrying the ship, obviously, the motive powering it, just like with clouds, like with waterfalls, rivers, and streams. Dragons is the energy that makes movement of the water, or in this case, the ship on the water. In the previous ones, the dragon was the ship itself. Now, because of that concept, some of the Buddha halls are really deliberately designed like this to be that the hall itself, the building, is a dragon ship. And that people go in there to worship. This is particularly used for Amita Buddha, Amita Buddha statue, the kind of halls that contain that for the Western paradise of Buddhism after death, that the hall is built like that, with the dragon head sticking out the front, dragon tail sticking out the back, and the entire building assumed to be this wooden dragon ship. So when you're in there worshiping to the Amita Buddha and such, you are already on the dragon ship on your journey to paradise, although you haven't died yet. But it's a temporary experience to make sure that you will get there when you do pass away. Okay? Nakri figure, these are guardian figures that aren't even really dragons. They're called Nakri. It's kind of a more guardian spirit figure, and we won't even go into this, but just to say that's not really a dragon, although it looks a lot like a dragon face. It actually kind of a separate feature. And more Taoist. This is again from Tongdosa, and a very well-known Yangsan Tongdosa Chui. It is a more well-known painting among aficionados, again, because it's very old and hasn't been painted over. This is more like a Taoist immortal spirit appearing as a young boy, or perhaps one of the bodhisattvas, the Moonsu or Bodhisattvas, as appearing as young boys, but riding to heaven on a dragon, ascending to heaven. That idea. Within my favorite topic of all Korean culture that I've spent 35 years obsessed with, the mountain spirits. And even a mountain spirit, again, the mountains are kind of opposite from dragon energy. Mountain is the still, unmoving earth, and dragon clouds wrap around the mountain to bring rain and such. The mountain spirit, but there's often a little motif here, his staff, the head of the staff being a dragon head. These are considered the best kind of master staff. If you have this piece of wood with the dragon head on the top, and see it's twisting like a dragon's body, this is seen to be very auspicious as a master staff. Here is one of the Buddhist Nahan, or disciple followers of Buddha, a bit of a drunkard, and such, and again with the dragon head staff on there. And when you get for the gods, for the immortal gods such as the Doksun, the holy disciple of Buddha, and there's a young boy servant making tea, stoking the fire to make tea for his master. This gets into the green tree traditions in these kind of paintings. Yes, a dragon teapot, a golden dragon teapot. It's put in that shape, and many traditional teapots were indeed made with that motif, especially in China. You don't find so many in China, in Korea, not at all. Traditional ones, but there are some, but the Chinese do that a lot. Okay, now finally, near the end, we get the idea of the Dragon King. Simply, in traditional culture, it's thought that everything has a king. Right? Pine trees have a king, it's the red pine tree. In fact, the red pine tree is the king of all plants. The tiger is the king of all animals. There's a king for everything, just as mirroring human society. And so dragons gotta have a king. In Korea, it's seen as kind of a unitary thing. Different dragon kings are worshipped all over Korea, but also in some kind of sense, there's just one dragon king. And he's thought to live in the East Sea, east of Korea, and have an underwater palace. Such. There are many of them. There are dragon kings worshipped at the rivers, at various waterfalls, and in all kinds of different fishing ports around the coast. And kind of they're different dragon kings according to their location, but in some sense they're all one also. This also applies with the mountain spirits. One particular. This comes from China. The Chinese actually have 4 major dragon kings and such. 4 of them with the 5 directions, north, south, east, west, and center, the 5 directions of Taoism. But the center is all land. Center doesn't have any big body of water, so center doesn't have a dragon king. But the other 4 directions do, and such. And the center here, the Wangyong, is the dragon king of rivers, wells, and springs. This, from Chinese culture, this is the origin of the Korean idea of the dragon king. This is in Chinese Taoism. You got the 4 dragon kings, north, south, east, west. And all these 3 all have human-type faces, regular human face. This one, with a rather fierce, dragonish face and a spiky beard, he's the king of the East. And he's the one who becomes the main dragon king in Korea. With Korean culture, this guy right up close, his motif, his artistic motif in Korean statues, Koreans ignore the other ones. It's the dragon, they don't have any regard for the dragon kings of the other directions. It's dragon king of the East. Is Korea the east of China, always seen as the eastern nation, the East Sea, etc. So in the ocean east of China, whatever. This became their emblematic figure So in Chinese Taoism, 4 of them are worshipped. In Korea, only one, the eastern one, who becomes the Dragon King. This is one of the earliest depictions we have of him, looking very kind of seamed, loose, and rather a bit goofy again, sort of such, in a Xinjun Tenghua guardian painting, and I'm going to do an entire book about these paintings, so you'll hear a lecture about that later. Such appearing in the painting, and then in new artworks, so like this, characteristic of the spiky kind of goatee, wearing a spiky like coral, like white coral, and spiky on his eyebrows, on her brows, a kind of extension. This here looks more like wet seaweed hanging down. Here gets more like spikes, like horns. Often depicted in these kind of paintings, guardian paintings. This is the mountain, or on opposite sides of the paintings in kind of a yin-yang balance, like the sun and the moon, the Dragon King, and the mountain spirit. And he's over here, and he's got a characteristic fishy look and spiky beard. Here's another one with very kind of starfish beard and eyebrows. Even you can always pick him out in these paintings. Here, with very bug eyes and a very strange, goofy looking guy. This is an old antique from the 1800s. Looking quite distinctive. This is a modern one. He's holding the pearl in his hand, sometimes holding just a piece of coral, as if a royal scepter. A piece of coral. Here he's holding the Jinju, magical pearl. Look at that. Now, he's often seen in more Yong-wang, a delivery. Yes, sir. I see. Yeah. Another 7 minutes. Okay, we'll just have time for questions and we'll be done. Look at that. Look at that. The altar paintings, more fancy painting with a dragon in the background, ocean in the background, really as a royal king in his thing. This is from Dale's website, a good standard one that he found. This one was at Gyeosan Haeinsa, very deep inland in the middle of Korea, in one of Korea's greatest temple, and this painting was personally burned by the great master Songchol, a whole story that I don't have time to tell, but burned by the greatest Zen master of the 1980s. In opposition here, the Bodhisattva of compassion seen in the distance, coming to visit the Dragon King, with a boy holding up incense to welcome her as the blue dragon. You got a whole little drama going on here. This is a more older, antique one, and such, with the dragons in the background, the ocean motif, the Dragon King, the yellow dragon, blue dragon, and statues of monks in front. That's from Ulongo. This is shaman painting. This may be one of the oldest ones we have. This is at the Imwangsan Buksatang, one of the oldest Dragon King paintings we have in Korea, such that kind of the shamans use as one of their powerful shaman spirits, reasonably equal to the mountain spirit. This is another more modern shamanic one with the turtle, the dragon down here, the motifs. Okay, Dragon King. This is used by a famous shaman, Kim Kun-hwa made this, and this is a female Dragon King, Dragon Queen, which is quite unusual or rare and such, is depicted sometimes, and occasionally a husband-wife couple of Dragon Kings, but exclusively female. This was under the influence of my teacher, Cho Jae-yong, and notice all the cavorting turtles and such all around in this. Many folk tales, which I don't have time to tell you, involve Dragon King, visiting the Dragon King often in his undersea palace. And he does good things for people, but can also be kind of harsh. And the favorite folk tale of all Korea, the rabbit riding the turtle to go visit the Dragon King, is maybe one of the top children's stories of Korea, endlessly depicted. The Yong-wang Dragon King shrines, where these icons are, there's a mountain spirit shrine and a Dragon King shrine there. And inside, motifs like this is from Gojedo Island, a whole variety, different styles of these kind of altar paintings that are inside these Yong-wang shrines. Great variety of motifs and style. Gojedo Island is full of fishermen, and using fishing communities on the coast here. This is near Busan, the Yong-wang dock. This is one of the more dramatic ones in Korea, really showing the motif that's also associated with Bodhisattva compassion of seaside cliffs. And people go out here for special prayer and worship 24 hours a day, all the time. In here, there's a statue of the Dragon King inside that. And at water fountains, the dragon motif, of course, as a giver of water at such shrines. And Dragon King ceremonies held at those shrines to worship the Dragon King. This is a whole nother lecture in itself that I will do someday about the different kinds of dragon ceremonies held at rivers, lakes, waterfalls, and especially coastal areas for fishermen, for the good luck, good fortune of fishermen. Much more about this and many more examples on my website. Please enjoy. Thank you for listening, and we'll enjoy.
Professor Macy can entertain a few questions from the floor.
The one rhythm is on the same as most of the Buddhists. Not only Buddhists, Confucius.
Oh yeah.
And
Confucianism, Taoism, Shamanism, and Buddhism. I have not seen the Christians in Korea using dragons. Not yet. May happen someday. I bring that in. But yes, all the traditional, the four major traditional orders, all use it, as I showed you, like the Confucian shrines, in the palaces. Of course, they're all over the place. Very much so. That's my kind of was my point here, my theme. It is so ubiquitous. Again, billions of them, billions, all over East Asia and in 4, 5, or 6 different religious traditions using these dragons. There's nothing on earth so artistically common as the portions of dragon.
in China too.
All of East Asia. All of it.
Do you think there's a chance that on the royal globes, when they have the dragon, that kind of goofy looking, that they're trying to mock China and the imperial?
I don't think it was a mocking. We don't really have much irony in East Asian culture. Not a lot of that. Sometimes rebellion of the common people against their superiors, but like in mask dancing, but otherwise not a mocking thing. I wouldn't think so. I think it's just a gentler, more friendly. I don't think they intended it to be goofy or comic, but a little more gentle and friendly. Because it's not like in China, it's imperial power, right? And fear and obey. And the way the Chinese becoming, again recently, sort of a theme. And Korea's never been like that. Korea's been more of a peaceful kingdom, trying to protect itself and trying to just get along and live nearby China. And I think more just a gentle and friendly image, more as a water spirit, because water's a good thing. Water's soft and wet and cold and nice. Helps us live, and so the dragons are simply friendly.
I appreciate it. You've done a very intensive job on dragon. Wow, sorry, I don't know much about what's going on in the Bible. How is it depicted when it comes to dragons? It's kind of legendary creature, right? Dragon is that.
Dragon.
Basically, it belongs to reptiles.
Well, it's a mythical creature.
Mythical.
I think especially in the Orient, it's a combination of all kinds of different animals,
Yeah,
ultimately looking reptilian.
What
Yes.
is depicted in Bible? How is depicted? Is it kind of
Now, I'm not an expert, and we should
Animal-
refer to
animal
someone like
evil
Brother
or what?
Anthony for this. I think that dragons are not in the Bible.
I think many of them.
Is there a dragon mentioned in the Bible?
Yeah.
There is.
The Book of Revelation.
Must be in
Yeah,
there.
many.
Oh, the Book of Revelation. Well, that would make sense.
Very interesting.
See, I'm not an expert on the.
Yeah. How is the big?
Dragons in Persia. You think that's okay?
All right. My name is Professor Sim of Korea University. I deeply appreciate the distinguished lecture about dragon culture. As you know, the dragon culture was universal before Christ. also not only in Eastern, but also Western. There are many dragon culture in the Western countries, as you know. Most representative examples of Mont Michel in France, Mont Michel Monastery. There live the dragons. Michael killed the dragons and they constructed the monastery there. Also in Spain, there is a monastery dragon festival. Gaudi's famous architecture, Sagrada Familia, main theme is a dragon.
Yes.
But at the Bible, Westerner describe the dragon as a harmful dragon, harmful figure, animal.
Humble?
Harmful. There are two kinds of
Yes,
dragon.
I think you came late. This was actually the,
Yeah.
the first point of my
They killed it. Michael killed the dragon.
Like this.
Yeah, he treated as saint and knight
That's how I
in
started.
Western culture. But because in the Bible they describe dragon as a harmful.
Oh, really?
Because dragon was more almighty than Jesus Christ. Dragon lives under the water, on the earth, flying to the sky. Very almighty figures. So they treated dragon as a paganism. But in the Eastern countries, we treated dragon as auspicious, beneficial animals. Dragon is not imaginary animals. Key exercise experts can grow the dragon and see the dragon.
We must stop, we're running out of time.
Yes, I know. Shortly.
My question is about.
Okay. Did you have a question to ask?
Yes.
Are you going to ask a question?
As you know, in Eastern country, China, Japan, Korea, dragon culture is so popular. Every corner of the traditional places, there are so many, as you shown the dragon. But in Western country, we cannot see the dragon. What is the main reason about that? We see.
Well, that kind of mythology is still pretty strong in the West and used in children's cartoons of The Lord of the Rings and all kinds of movies. Just recently, Game of Thrones, most popular TV show in the West, using dragons heavily in its motif, again, generally as destructive powers and fire breathing quite a bit. So thank you.